and I'm very excited to introduce to you Laurel Raffington. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Psychology and Population Research at the University of Texas in Austin, and she's going to talk to us about social inequality. Laura, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, I'm Laurel Raffington, and today I'll be speaking to you about Hans, Klaus, Peter, and Susanne. You may have heard of them as they are the most common names of German academics, although to be fair, Susanne as the top female name doesn't appear until rank 62. But my goal for today is for us to start thinking about why and how Hans, Klaus, Peter, and Susanne landed jobs as university lecturers. We know that people differ along socially constructed dimensions such as gender and racial identity. And many of these socially constructed differences between people have some genetic component. Hans carries XY chromosomes and Susanne carries XX chromosomes. They also probably both carry genes associated with lighter skin tones. Approximately 200 years ago, German academics played a leading role in developing theories of genetic superiority and inferiority between groups of people that reinforced political atrocities. Even today, some will argue that disparities in social status and income are genetic in origin and thus not sensitive to social policy. So, genetic determinism is historically rooted in racism to justify social privilege. In contrast, social equity scholars conceptualize differences between people as neutral in value, but our societal systems impose hierarchies on those differences, which results in unequal challenges and opportunities through structural sexism, racism, classism, and importantly, their overlap. I will now show you empirical evidence of ours that indicates that genes do not determine differences between us, but rather that genetic effects depend on the environment we live in. By comparing the secretion of the stress-sensitive hormone cortisol in reaction to a new psychosocial stressor between monozygotic and dizygotic twins, we were able to plot out the trajectories of cortisol secretion by genotype. For instance, children with genetic dispositions for higher cortisol secretion before stress starts in blue can then have genotypes associated with lower responses to stress, the blue dotted line, and thereby reordering differences between people. So our results provide empirical evidence that genes regulate people's reactions to the environment in a probabilistic, not deterministic manner, and that different environments evoke the activity of different genes. So genetic differences are clearly important drivers of complex human outcomes, but they are not the cause of social inequality. Recent molecular genomic research further shows that the expression of genetic effects, or the activity of genes, such as those involved in higher, medium, or lower propensities for attaining more education, is constrained by social inequality. Specifically, being a white man from a richer family in a post-Soviet democratic country with medium to high genetic propensities for attaining higher education is more likely to have higher school grades and attain higher levels of social status. However, for people from poorer family background, having genetic propensities to get more education is less likely to result in, say, a PhD because they have less opportunities to self-actualize their genetic propensities. It's a glass ceiling effect on genetic expression. So we can start to guess what environment most Hans, Klaus, Peter, and more recently Susanne's come from. My research further suggests that we embody systems of social inequality at the cellular level. For instance, in how our DNA is methylated, which is involved in regulating our genes' activities. In the US, lower family income, neighborhood disadvantage, and food insecurity are already visible in 8 to 18-year-old children's DNA methylation profiles. Even children's racial ethnic identity differentiated DNA methylation profiles, and this was accounted for by the higher rates of economic disadvantage experienced by Latinx relative to white families in Texas, which we know play a big role in the large racial health disparities in the US. So we embody our systems of social inequality to some degree already in childhood, thereby reinforcing social inequality over generations and wasting human potential. Instead, we should leverage human genetic variation through equitable social structures that respect the differences between us to make creative use of the differences between us rather than privileging the few. Thank you very much.